I didn't say a word when the deputy slid that eviction notice across my kitchen table. I just pulled out an old folder, yellowed edges and all, and laid down a deed signed in 1926 that gave my great-grandfather permanent water rights to the entire creek running through our valley. The man barely glanced at it before muttering that the proper authorities would figure it out. I knew then this wasn't just a paperwork mix-up. 35 shiny new homes had been built on land that didn't belong to them, and the HOA behind it thought they could bury me under permits, lawsuits, and intimidation. What they didn't know is that my family had been here long before their suburb even had a name, and I wasn't about to roll over. I grew up on this land just outside San Marcos, Texas. My grandfather, we all called him Pops, was the kind of man who believed in neighbors before profit. In 1979, he built a small earthen dam with help from the Army Corps of Engineers, not to make money, but to hold water for cattle and to release downstream when dry spells hit. That dam was a quiet heartbeat for the whole valley, keeping fields alive and families farming. As a kid, I fished for perch off its banks, listened to Pops explain how water was more valuable than oil, and swore I'd take care of it. Life had other plans. 2 tours in Afghanistan as a combat engineer left me with scars you can't always see. I came back sharper, tougher maybe, but also protective, because I'd watched how fast people can fight over water when it's scarce. When Pops passed, my sister Elena handled the estate. She lives in California, more comfortable with surfboards than survey maps. She trusted a management company to keep up with taxes and paperwork, but never noticed that assessments had shifted. That's how a woman named Patricia Langley, president of the brand new Riverbend Oaks HOA, slipped her claws into our land. Patricia is the type who wears tennis skirts to zoning hearings, pearls to construction sites, and talks like honey while she's cutting your throat. Married to a city councilman, she had every connection a suburban empire builder could want. By the time I came home in 2022, their construction crews were finishing foundations where our cattle once grazed. I remember the crunch of gravel as I stormed across the pasture and asked the foreman what the hell he was doing. He didn't flinch. "Permits are in order, buddy. This is Riverbend Oaks property now." Minutes later, Patricia herself came gliding up in her golf cart, waving like we were old friends. "Your family abandoned this land," she said sweetly. "We're just putting it to better use." That smile was the kind that makes you check your wallet. I told her the creek and dam were ours, had always been ours. She patted my arm like I was a confused old uncle. "Soldier boy," she whispered, "you should have stayed closer to home." That line burned in my ears for weeks. Then I noticed something worse, the water level in Pops's dam dropping inch by inch. Their crews had diverted the creek to feed ornamental ponds and trickling fountains in front of those new homes. 40 years of careful water stewardship was drying up right before my eyes. I called the police. They shrugged. I called a lawyer. He quoted me 80 grand just to file a zoning challenge. The whole system was rigged, but I had 2 advantages. 1, Pops kept everything, permits, maps, even his journals. 2, I know how to read them. Digging through county records felt a lot like clearing mines overseas. Slow, patient, nerve-wracking. But then you find something that changes the whole terrain. I uncovered the original 1979 dam permit stamped with the Army Corps seal, which meant federal jurisdiction. Local ordinances can't touch that. Then deeper still, I found the 1926 water rights deed. Senior rights older than the subdivision, older than the city council itself. My hands were shaking holding that paper because I realized this wasn't just a family fight. It was federal law on my side. Meanwhile, Patricia escalated. She filed complaints about my unsightly structures, reported my perfectly legal septic system as hazardous, and even sent veteran services to do a wellness check on me, claiming I was unstable. Imagine standing on your own porch while a social worker asks if you've had suicidal thoughts, and there's Patricia parked nearby in her BMW, sunglasses on, supervising like it was some neighborhood watch game. That was the day I swore this wasn't going to end with paperwork. This was going to end with water. I called an old buddy from the service, Luis Delgado, who now works with the EPA. He told me flat out, diverting a natural waterway without federal clearance is a violation of the Clean Water Act. Every day they pumped that creek into ornamental ponds. They were racking up fines in the tens of thousands. He encouraged me to document everything: photos, flow measurements, wildlife impact. So I did. I installed trail cameras, took samples, kept meticulous logs. The more evidence I gathered, the angrier I got, especially after meeting neighbors who'd also suffered. Mrs. Alvarez, 75 years old, showed me her dried-up garden that had thrived on creek water since the 40s. Miguel Sanchez, a farmer down the valley, told me his stock ponds were bone dry for the first time in a century. Patricia wasn't just stealing from me. She was bleeding an entire community. That's when I rediscovered Pops's engineering. The dam wasn't just a pond wall. It had a hidden spillway system built to release water in controlled floods, designed precisely to maintain natural creek flow during wet seasons. I tested the hydraulic gates at midnight one evening. The sound of rusted metal grinding open, the echo of water rushing through channels that hadn't been used in decades. It gave me chills. Pops had built it for neighbors in need. Now it was my turn. I realized I didn't have to wait for courts or councils. I could restore the creek myself, legally, carefully, and right in front of federal investigators. The timing was perfect. September rains were forecast to be the heaviest in years. I coordinated with Luis at EPA, with Amanda, a pro bono water rights lawyer who believed in the cause, and with neighbors who wanted their land revived. We set it up like a military op. Notices posted, volunteer fire department alerted, media tipped off. The plan was simple: open the spillway gradually at sunrise, demonstrate natural creek flow, document every second. If Patricia wanted a fight, she'd have to explain to the world why natural water in a natural creek was somehow a crime. She tried everything to stop me. Hired private security goons who got caught on camera trying to sabotage the spillway with quickset concrete. Rushed to court for an emergency restraining order from her golf buddy judge. Even staged a photo op with mothers holding children at the property line, crying about safety. But by then, federal inspectors were already en route, and the storm clouds were building. I hardly slept that night, pacing the farmhouse floorboards, listening to the distant rumble of thunder and the closer rumble of construction trucks retreating. Pops's old journal sat open on the table. Sometimes you have to flood the valley to save the creek, at 7:05 a.m., with reporters, neighbors, and federal agents watching. I pulled the lever. The gates creaked, water gushed, and Willow Creek roared back into its old bed like it had been waiting for decades. It wasn't violent. It was beautiful, measured, steady, exactly as engineered. Farmers downstream cried, watching their ponds fill. Mrs. Alvarez knelt to scoop water into her weathered hands. Even the inspectors looked moved. Patricia, meanwhile, lost her mind. She screamed that I was a terrorist, waved her arms at the cameras, demanded they arrest me. But the EPA agent calmly explained she was witnessing a lawful agricultural flood control system, operating under federal jurisdiction. Her narrative collapsed in real time. The fallout was swift. State insurance regulators froze the HOA's policies after Amanda submitted evidence of fraudulent applications. The bank that financed construction panicked when it learned water rights had never transferred. Patricia's husband was caught on a wiretap bragging about rezoning deals. Within weeks, he resigned under investigation. Patricia herself faced millions in civil penalties, and the HOA dissolved. Those 35 McMansions? Some owners walked away, others sued her into bankruptcy, and the creek, our creek, flowed as naturally as it had for generations. 6 months later, the valley looks different. Not with suburbs, but with life. The fish have returned, birds nest in the willows again, farms are green. We started a local festival called Creek Days where kids splash in water that once was stolen for fountains. We even set up a scholarship in Pops's name for students studying water management. Sometimes on quiet evenings, I sit on the dam with my sister Elena, who finally moved back, and we listen to the creek. She says it sounds like the land is breathing again. People ask me if it was revenge. Truth is, it wasn't. It was about defending something bigger than myself. Pops didn't build that dam for profit, and I didn't open it to punish. We did it for neighbors, for the land, for the belief that some things aren't for sale, no matter how slick the HOA president or how connected her husband. So now I'll throw the question to you. Was I right to open those gates to fight an HOA with water and law instead of walking away with a settlement? Or do you think I went too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one, and I know plenty of you have your own HOA horror stories. Hit subscribe if you want more tales of communities standing up to power, because this fight isn't just mine. It's every neighbor who refuses to be bullied off their own land. Water finds a way. Justice should too.